I'ma go buy me a gun, and I'ma come back here and set this motherfucker off.
He didn't find out the way most people find out in a murder case. From a phone call, from a detective at the door, from someone who decided he had a right to know first. Terry found out the same way the rest of the world did. And by the time he understood what his ex had flown 1,000 miles to do, Kayla Hodgson had already been dead for hours. Welcome to Hidden Criminal Files. To my loyal subscribers, I pray your families remain safe and protected wherever they are. If you're new here, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We bring you the untold details of true crime cases, the facts others leave behind, and the truths that deserve to be heard. Today, we examine what happened at Tamarack Village Apartments in Tamarack, Florida, on the morning of July 13th, 2022. Here is what the investigation ultimately established. A woman had been watching Terry's new relationship from New York for months, going through his phone, monitoring his new girlfriend's social media, tracking a situation she had decided was not finished. When Kayla Hodgson blocked her, she booked a flight to Florida. Not the morning of the murder, days before it. She had time to change her mind. She used every one of those days to stay the course. She arrived at Kayla's apartment complex at approximately 5 in the morning, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, a COVID mask, and gloves. She had used a fake Uber account, so her name would not appear in any rideshare record. When she left, she was wearing different clothes from when she arrived. Kayla Hodgson's clothes. The jury that heard this case deliberated for 1 hour, but here is the detail that every other account of this case moves past too quickly. Terry, the man at the center of everything, was not called to testify. He was not documented at the sentencing. The public record places him nowhere in the aftermath of what was done in his name. And I think that's where this case actually begins. Not with the obsession, not with the flight, not with the disguise. It begins with a man who had already moved on, who had no idea what was forming around him, and ends with 2 women whose lives were destroyed by a version of him that only one of them believed in. By the time this is over, you are going to understand exactly how we got here. Kayla Hodgson was 23 years old in the summer of 2022. She was living at Tamarack Village Apartments in Tamarack, Florida, with her mother. By every account from the people in her life, she was someone in the early pages of her adult chapter, figuring out the city, building her social life, working through the ordinary and not always simple business of being young and in motion in a place still becoming familiar. She had recently started seeing a man named Terry. It was new enough that the details of what they were building together were still being written. Kayla had no complete picture of what Terry's previous relationship had looked like from the other side. She knew there was tension. She knew someone was paying attention to her social media in a way that didn't feel right. But the full geometry of what was already in motion, she didn't have that. She was operating as most of us do in these situations, with the information available to her. That incomplete picture is not a failure on her part. It is the condition she was given. And it matters because every decision she made from that point forward was made with less information than the situation required. She did not know the name of what was coming. She only felt its edge. Terry had ended his relationship with Sakiyna Thompson. He had moved on. From his position, the chapter was closed. He had started something new with Kayla, and whatever friction existed in the background, that was the background, not the foreground. He was wrong about that. But there was no information available to him that would have told him otherwise. Sakiyna Thompson was 28 years old, living in Springfield Gardens in Queens, New York. She was Jamaican-born.
I still got one bitch, I'ma smack the wig off. And then I'ma change.
By the accounts of those around her, she was someone who felt the world at higher volume than most. When things were good, you knew it. When they weren't, that registered too. She was someone who didn't move through experiences lightly. That quality, in the right circumstances, can be a gift. In the circumstances that followed the end of her relationship with Terry, it became something else entirely. When Terry ended the relationship, Thompson didn't move through it the way the end of a relationship usually goes. The slow and sometimes painful process of gradually redirecting attention towards something new. She moved through something else. She began going through Terry's phone looking for evidence of a new relationship. She found Kayla Hodgson's Instagram, and she began watching, not passively, actively. Cataloging, building a case inside her own mind for something the relationship had already settled. On June 28, 2022, exactly 14 days before the murder, Thompson posted 2 videos to her TikTok account, @SoHuckShaky. She labeled them Step 1.
Step 1.
Notice I get so much love from pretty fly bitches. The bum bitches be hating.
And Step 2.
But are you willing to compromise within a relationship?
Compromise? What is compromising? Compromising for what? Compromising for what reason? To compromise for what?
In the first video, she sits on a bench and the camera pans to vintage footage of Eartha Kitt, the performer and activist, speaking about her refusal to compromise in relationships, about not diminishing herself for a man who had already started looking elsewhere. The imagery was deliberate, the framing was deliberate. The choice to document this publicly at this specific moment was deliberate. In the moment, the videos look like what most of us have posted or watched after a painful breakup. Someone finding language for what they're feeling. Someone looking for solidarity in someone else's words. 14 days later, they read like something else entirely. If you have never seen this channel before, subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell. We go this deep on every case. You do not want to miss what is coming. By late June 2022, Thompson had moved past surveillance into direct contact. She had been sending messages. The exchanges between her and Kayla had become tense. Kayla, for her part, had done nothing to create this situation. She was dating someone who was, as far as she knew, no longer in a relationship with anyone else. At some point in those final days of June, Kayla Hodgson made a decision. She blocked Sakiyna Thompson on social media. I want to be precise about what that decision means in ordinary usage, because this is the part of the case that most coverage walks right past. Blocking is not an act of aggression. It is not an escalation. It is the one tool that every online safety resource, every therapist who works with stalking survivors, every platform safety guide will tell you is your cleanest option when someone is harassing you online. You press it. 3 seconds. The person disappears from your digital world entirely. No explanation required. No confrontation. Clean boundary. Exactly what you are supposed to do. Kayla pressed it. To Sakiyna Thompson, it was a declaration of war. Here's the psychology the trial record implicitly documents, even if no one named it quite this way in the courtroom. Thompson had not been processing the end of her relationship with Terry. She had been building a structure around it, monitoring, cataloging, maintaining a version of reality in which she and Terry were still fundamentally connected, and Kayla Hodgson was an obstacle placed in the middle of something unfinished. Inside that structure, the block wasn't Kayla protecting herself. It was Kayla winning. It was Kayla saying, "You don't exist to me." And inside a psychology that had been running this particular program for months, feeding itself, that was intolerable, in a way that ordinary reasoning cannot fully reach. This is the part of the case I think deserves the most attention and gets the least, because it reframes the entire sequence of events. Thompson wasn't in a love triangle. She was in a reality that no one else around her was living in. A reality in which Terry still belonged to her in some fundamental sense, in which Kayla's relationship with him was a form of theft, and in which the block, the most routine act of digital self-protection available, was the final confirmation that the theft had been completed, that Kayla had won something Thompson could not accept losing. The block was the detonator, not the breakup, not discovering Terry had moved on. The block. Thompson booked a flight to Florida. And here's the detail that deserves more weight than most accounts give it. According to the Broward Sheriff's Office, Thompson did not fly down the morning of July 13th. She arrived in Tamarack days before the murder. She was in the same city as Kayla Hodgson for days before she walked to that apartment door. Every one of those days was a moment she could have gotten back on a plane and gone home. Every one of those days, she chose not to. That gap is not a minor footnote. It is the prosecution's premeditation argument before a single piece of physical evidence has even entered the conversation. A person acting on sudden, overwhelming emotion does not spend days in the same city as their target, waiting for the right hour. That kind of sustained commitment to a course of action, across multiple days, in an unfamiliar city, alone, requires a decision that has already been made and will not be revised. The night before July 13th, Kayla Hodgson went to sleep in the apartment she shared with her mother. She had blocked the person who had been bothering her. From her vantage point, the situation had been addressed. She had used the tool she was supposed to use. She had done everything right. Her mother was home. Remember that. We will come back to it. At approximately 5 in the morning on July 13th, 2022, the surveillance cameras at Tamarack Village Apartments recorded a woman arriving at the complex. She was wearing a wide-brimmed hat, a COVID mask, gloves. She had used a fake Uber account to get there, created specifically so her name would not appear in any rideshare record. She had anticipated the question of how investigators would trace her there, and she had built a wall in front of the answer. Let's be precise about what that disguise tells us, not emotionally, analytically. The wide-brimmed hat obstructs overhead camera angles. The mask covers the lower half of the face. The gloves eliminate fingerprints. At 5 in the morning at a residential apartment complex. Not a bank, not a government building. A place where the residents are asleep. That combination of choices is not the wardrobe of someone who came to have a conversation. It is the preparation of someone who intended to leave no trace of having been there. The defense would later argue there was no evidence Thompson brought a weapon to that apartment and that Kayla had allowed her inside. Both of those things may be true. They do not change what followed. Kayla Hodgson was stabbed dozens of times. Her mother was in that residence. Thompson did not run, she stayed. She cleaned parts of the scene with Lysol wipes and paper towels. She gathered her bloody clothing. And then she did something that gets reported as a footnote in most coverage of this case, but which I think is the most psychologically significant act in the entire sequence of events. Something that says more about the interior of this situation than anything else in the record. She changed into Kayla Hodgson's clothes. Not purely to avoid surveillance. She had already been recorded arriving. She put on the clothes of the woman she had just killed and walked out of that building wearing them. The surveillance cameras recorded her leaving. Different clothes, same building, same morning. She got into another fake account Uber. She flew back to New York. On the stand months later, Thompson told the courtroom, "I was pregnant and I just killed somebody." She offered this as her explanation for why she did not call police. As though those two facts together had produced a paralysis she could not move through. She also told the jury, "I killed her because she took the glass from the hookah and slashed me across my stomach. I told her I was pregnant and I felt like she was trying to hurt my baby. I didn't just fight for me. I fought for me and my baby." The jury listened to that account. They also looked at the footage of a woman arriving in a disguise at 5 in the morning, leaving in a dead woman's clothes, and departing in a car registered to a name that did not exist. They took 1 hour to decide what they thought. The Broward Sheriff's Office received a call on July 13th reporting a woman unresponsive in a home.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
Oh, ma'am, I don't know the address. I just came.
Okay, what is the apartment number? Do you know if that has a building number?
I could go downstairs and check. 1 second, please.
Tell me exactly what happened. Okay, on the phone.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Oh, we're going to continue to update the units, all right? Continue to stay on the line with me.
Okay.
How old is she? Continue to stay on the line with me, okay?
When investigators arrived at Tamarack Village Apartments, they found a crime scene that had been partially cleaned. Not thoroughly, not professionally, but deliberately. That distinction, partial cleanup, not flight, is behaviorally significant. It is the signature of someone who stayed long enough to make deliberate decisions about the aftermath. Someone in genuine shock does not stay at the scene to wipe surfaces and change clothing before leaving. Someone who acted on a pure sudden impulse does not plan those next steps with enough clarity to execute them. The behavior told investigators something about this person's state of mind before they even had a name to attach to it. The evidence trail that followed assembled itself with almost methodical clarity. The surveillance footage, a woman arriving in a disguise, the same woman leaving in a different outfit, same morning, same building, different clothes. Those two images, both captured, both clear, became the fixed points around which the entire investigation was anchored. The Uber records, a fake account, traced, created specifically so no real name would appear in any rideshare record. The account for the departure was also fake. Both ends of the trip scrubbed. That tells you something. Covering the departure as carefully as the arrival means the cover-up was planned before the crime, not after it. The flight records. This is where the premeditation argument becomes, in my view, unanswerable. Thompson did not fly to Florida the morning of the murder. She had been in Tamarack for days before she acted. That is documented. A person acting in the heat of an overwhelming moment does not spend multiple days in the same city as their target, waiting for 5 in the morning to make their move. The TikTok posts, the Step 1 and Step 2 videos posted June 28th to @SoHawkShaki, were preserved and placed inside the timeline, not standalone proof, but as one documented piece of a state of mind that existed 14 days before the murder, placed inside a timeline where every other piece points in the same direction. They matter. And then there was Thompson's own testimony. The cleanup confirmed on the stand, the clothing change confirmed on the stand, the return flight to New York confirmed on the stand. All of it, in her own words, in a Broward County courtroom. Investigators obtained a warrant for Thompson's arrest on July 25, 2022. On August 3rd, NYPD officers took her into custody in Springfield Gardens, Queens, less than 3 weeks after the murder. She was extradited to Florida on a first-degree murder charge. If you have been watching this channel for a while, you already know we don't rush the investigation section, because the evidence is where the real story lives. If you are new here, drop a comment below telling us how you found this video. And subscribe. We will be here. Whatever relief Thompson thought she had bought herself on that return flight, it had a very short shelf life. The trial took place in October 2025. Sakiyna Thompson, now 31, took the stand in her own defense. This was her choice. It meant the jury got to hear her account directly. And it meant the prosecution got to place that account next to everything the cameras had recorded. Thompson described going to Kayla's apartment to talk. She said she went uninvited. She said she wanted a conversation, woman to woman, about the fact that they were both involved with the same man. She said Hodgson attacked her first, grabbed her hair, punched her, struck her over the head with a hookah stem, and cut her stomach with a piece of glass. She testified she was 2 months pregnant. She said she told Kayla that. She said she blacked out, and when she came back to consciousness, Kayla was already dead. The defense argued separately that there was no evidence Thompson had brought a weapon to the apartment. They argued the killing was not premeditated. They argued Hodgson had allowed Thompson inside. Each of those arguments, taken alone, is not impossible. Placed against the full body of evidence, the jury had to decide how much weight they carried. The prosecution's closing centered on 4 things: the disguise at 5 in the morning at a residential complex, the fake Uber accounts covering both the arrival and the departure, the days spent in Tamarack before she acted, and the cleanup, the Lysol wipes, the clothing change, the deliberate walkout of a building in a dead woman's clothes. If you went there to talk, why did you go to those lengths to make sure no one could trace you there? The jury heard 4 hours of closing arguments. They deliberated for 1 hour. Guilty. First-degree murder. On December 1st, 2025, a Broward County judge sentenced Sakiyna Thompson to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Before the sentence was handed down, 10 of Kayla Hodgson's family members and friends stood in that courtroom and spoke. 10 people who had spent more than 3 years waiting for this day. Kayla's cousin, Melanie John, said, "What she did was wicked and evil, and a person like her, it's important they never see the light of day again." Her cousin Alicia Mitchell said, "I feel like I can finally start some type of healing. It will never be the same. We will forever miss her. The way she died, it will never really sit right with us. At least the person responsible is being held accountable." And Kayla's family said this about the verdict. "We're just so thankful in this moment that the jury was able to see the story for what it is, that Kayla did not deserve to die the way that she did." Now Terry, the man this video's title is built around, the man whose new relationship became the reason for everything that followed, the man whose ex-girlfriend flew 1,000 miles, spent days preparing, put on a disguise, used false accounts, and took a life. The court record is silent on where Terry is today. He did not testify at trial. He was not documented at the sentencing. He does not appear in any verified coverage of the aftermath as a grieving partner, as a witness, as someone whose life was visibly interrupted by any of this. He found out the way everyone else did. And then, as far as the record shows, he was gone. And I think that absence is the most revealing thing in this entire case. Not because Terry did anything wrong. He ended a relationship. He started a new one. He had every right to do both. But the fact that his absence from the official record is total, that the man at the center of everything left no visible footprint in its aftermath, says something precise about the distance between what Thompson believed was at stake and what was actually at stake. She destroyed her entire future over a dynamic that the man at its center had already resolved. The version of Terry that Thompson was fighting for, the version that still needed her, that was being taken from her, that the block was an attack against, that version did not exist anywhere outside the architecture she had built around it. And Kayla Hodgson, who had never asked to be part of any of this, paid the price for a reality she was never even invited into. Kayla was 23 years old, someone's daughter, a young woman still building her life in a city that was still becoming hers. She recognized something was wrong. She used every tool available to protect herself. She did everything correctly, and she still could not outrun what was already on its way. Drop a comment right now. Does the 1-hour jury deliberation tell you more about the strength of the prosecution's case or the failure of the defense? This community always has the sharpest takes. I want to see yours. I want to go back to Terry one last time. Not to assign him responsibility he does not carry in the legal record, but to sit with the question this case actually leaves open, the one that no other coverage of it has asked directly. What does it mean to be the unwitting center of someone else's obsession? To move through your life, making ordinary decisions, ending a relationship, starting a new one, while someone else is constructing an entire architecture of meaning around those same decisions in a place you cannot see and will not know about until it's too late. Terry did not know what was forming. There was no moment where he could have seen the full shape of it and intervened. That is not a comfort. That is actually the hardest thing about this case, because the damage did not flow from anything he could have stopped. It flowed from a reality that existed entirely in someone else's mind, and Kayla Hodgson was the one who paid for it. This case does not end with a sentencing. It ends with a mother who lost her daughter in the apartment they shared. It ends with a family that spent 3 years waiting for a 1-hour jury to give them something that, as Alicia Mitchell said, will never really sit right. And it ends with a question the public record cannot answer, whether Terry, wherever he is today, fully understands the weight of what was done in his name. I don't think that question has a clean answer, and I think it is supposed to stay with you. If this case stayed with you, subscribe and turn on notifications. We cover every case at this depth, and we are not slowing down. Comment the word next below and we will drop the details on what we are covering next. And to Kayla Hodgson, who set every boundary available to her, who did everything right, and who still could not outrun what was already coming. This one is for her.